What up, fam? This is Dr. Day Luna, and you are listening to Drop It Like It's Doc podcast. Today, we have on Blake Spencer, an incredible breathwork facilitator, one of my closest friends, and we are diving into breathwork. We're going to break apart a bunch of the bullshit in the industry, talk about physiology, talk about how it can change your life for better or for worse. So, if you're a yogi or just interested in breathwork, you're going to want to watch this episode. Without further ado, let's drop in. Hello, my dear.
Hi, darling.
I am over the moon that A, we are in the same city, and B, that you are here sitting across from me. I'm so excited to have you and just so excited to have a conversation about breath and your journey.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here.
Yes. So for all of my guests, I start by love bombing you, which is exquisitely easy to do. So Blake, I fucking love you. I love looking at you. Your smile is one of my favorite smiles in the world. It really is. You have a phenomenal smile. I love your voice. I could listen to you talk just nonstop, but these are just little things about you. But what I really, really love about you is just the flavor of life that is Blake. Because from the whole time that I've known you, you've just shown up as yourself, and you've always been someone that I've been able to just talk to unfiltered. And now that I reflect back, I remember when I fell in love with you. It was at, what was the name of the event? It was at
Where were we?
Funk Your Fears. And you were in this really cute outfit and you were just dancing your sweet little ass off. And the way that you showed up to that moment and just fully expressed yourself, I was like, I love her.
It was red overalls.
It was red overalls. I was going to say that, but I didn't want to mess it up. It was red overalls. Phenomenal. So thank you for being you. And I'm just so excited to learn more about you so that I can fall even deeper in love with you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate all of that.
Of course. Of course. So, my dear, of course I know you. Of course I know you. I met you in the yoga world, but
That's
I
right.
would love to hear how you got to be Breath of Blake.
Woo! Breath of Blake was birthed in San Diego. I had finished school in San Francisco, came down to San Diego per a friend's invitation, and ended up working at People's Co-op. Met, everyone.
I
Actually,
forgot!
I think that's where I first met you.
I forgot.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
And fell in love with the yoga world, did a yoga teacher training, and ended up at a yoga festival in LA and found this breathwork teacher. And I had been introduced to breathwork from my therapist when I was like 22 years old, I want to say. So I had my own breathwork practice, but I didn't know that you could just teach a class of 500 people and do breathwork. So I showed up at this breathwork thing, and there's so many people in there, and there's this teacher, and I'm just like, I got to do that. Like, whatever that is, I need to learn that. I need to teach that. So I ended up doing a training with him. I ended up doing a training with his teacher, and it's really just evolved since then. I've had, my own practice with breathwork for the last 10 years. And just recently, I guess in the last 3-4 years, pandemic-y world, I really dove deep into trauma and understanding body and the trauma, and then how the breath work kind of relates to all of that and how we can work with trauma through breath work. And so it's been just this very long, wild, side-swipey journey of just like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm doing it. And hopefully that works out for me. And then, I got into the San Diego yoga community and started doing breath workshops all over and teaching other people breath work. And it's been so amazing to see all of these other teachers pop up in this area.
Yes. Yes. You were, even in my little community, you were one of the first to step forward.
I wanted to say that, but I didn't feel like saying that. I don't know why. I'm like ashamed or like embarrassed. But yes, I was one of the first in San Diego that was just like, this is it.
Yeah.
This is it.
You opened my world to it, and I will never forget when I went to a breathwork ceremony of yours, and it was at Indie Yoga, and I was lying on the floor, and we were doing the breathing exercises that we'll get into and kind of what that brings up. But I remember I just saw this ridiculous green orb, this light. It just came into my head, and without a doubt in my mind, it was my grandmother.
Oh, wow.
This sweet baby angel.
Oh,
Jean.
there she
It was
is.
Jean. She's here. But in that moment, it was one of those moments that is undeniable. And I think that in a lot of individuals that I talk to when we have these spiritual experiences, especially with the inquisitive mind, they go, how? Why? That's not possible. And they try to rip it apart. But when you have a moment like that, you can't deny it. It's no one can tell me that it was not my grandmother because it was.
It absolutely was.
It was. And I felt this opening in my heart space that I haven't felt. And in that moment when I was processing it all, I realized, drop back into my body, that you were there. You must have felt me. You came over, you held my head, and you just created this beautiful space and this reminder that I was safe to drop even further into that, because as we're definitely going to unravel, a lot can come up in the breathwork world. Correct. A lot can make you feel unsafe. It can make you feel vulnerable because all this shit is coming to the surface. So before we get there, I wanted to note on how it is so amazing that your therapist was the first one to introduce breathing to you and breath work because of the power that it has over the central nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. But what was it like for you transitioning from your yoga practice and learning what breath work was there, pranayama, to stepping into this different type of breath work?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I started to realize exactly what you're talking about, is that breath work can really open people up so big. And it's beautiful. And at the time, when you first came to my workshops, there would be 30, 40, sometimes 50 people in my workshops, all breathing in this space together. I would let people yell, scream, laugh, cry. I mean, people were just popping off. And it was amazing. And I have had just so many reflections from that time of like, you changed my life, or like whatever. And it's like, I didn't do anything. Like, I just facilitated this breathwork class. But at a certain point, I realized like, oh, this breath work can actually re-traumatize people. And I don't know that I want to be responsible for that. And I think it was just in learning more about my nervous system that I started to recognize that breath work sometimes did actually re-traumatize me. And if I would go in these states of like extreme mania and excitedness and like, oh my God, the world's amazing. Everything's synchronistic. Like life is just beautiful and unfolding and oh, this is great. Like I was just like, this is so amazing. And then I would drop down, right? It's that like, I would drop all the way down into these like manic depressive states, and I couldn't leave my bed for 5 days. And it was just like, the world is ending. And so I really started to get infatuated with figuring out for myself, how do I balance this out? And then that, naturally changed how I worked with people, because I became more interested in integrating these experiences than in getting people to have transformational experiences where the breath work is like pushing them off the top of a mountain and forcing them to feel their feelings that potentially they're not ready to feel. And so I didn't want to take that on any longer as a facilitator. And I recognized that the work actually is much more integratable and profound when we can invite people into their feelings without forcing them into it. Because once there's a safety created around what they feel and don't feel or are not ready to feel, then that's when they can start to bring their feelings into everyday life and not go through the high highs and low lows.
I love everything that just came out of your mouth for so many reasons. And again, that's why you're here, because you're real and also because you're doing the work. You're not, and I'm going to talk shit, of course, but there's so many people that'll be like, yeah, I got certified online to do a breathwork ceremony course, and now I lead breathwork, and my name is now Starseed, and I am going to guide people through breathwork ceremonies and have no idea what the fuck they're doing in a lot of ways, because yes, you are dropping someone into a trauma response. That's what's happening. And that is also why it is so powerful, because you are feeling feelings. You're allowing these things to come to the surface, to be seen, to be
potentially
felt.
for the first time.
Potentially for the first time. But then as a facilitator, you're holding that space. So have you ever had an experience where, or of course you have, because that's why you're here. Can you please share with us an experience in which you observe someone become re-traumatized and what that process was like?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The first one that comes to mind, it was a breath workshop. I mean, I guess there's been a lot of times. And I just want to say, like, within that, it was like, I kind of got to this place where I was like, I don't know that I want those like karmic ties of like re-traumatizing people. Like, that doesn't feel good to me. But the first time that I can think of, I was doing it was a small session. And one of the people in the session just went so deep, so fast. And it almost looked like they were seizing. And they were like there was so much snot and tears coming from their face, and they were on their side and they were shaking uncontrollably. So I, of course, went over to check in on this person.
Naturally.
And naturally, I was just like, oh my God. And then I had this thought of like, do I know how to hold this? And I've gone so deep with the breath work. I've been in that space by myself, like no sitter, nobody holding the space for me. Like, just like I had some shit come up, and like, I knew that she was going to be okay because I was okay, but did I really know that? And not only that, but it's like, and when she leaves this space, how will she take care of herself? Does she have the resources to take care of herself? Because at that time, I was still learning how to like feed myself 3 meals a day, right? And it's like, if somebody doesn't have those foundational things for themselves, then I don't know what I'm sending them back out into the world to do. So that was the first time. And then another time I had like a 50 women in a space, and one of the people started throwing up in the bushes. And I was just like, oh shit, what's going on? So I checked in on her. I was like, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? And she was really great about it. She was just like, you know, I'm moving through a lot. I'm definitely just like purging it out. But that was another sign to me that it was just like, this is taking people too far, too fast. And I don't know that I feel comfortable with it. And at no point, I will say, like, at no point has anyone come to me and said like, oh, you know, I wish I didn't do that or whatever. Although I did have some sessions where people were just like, I was super uncomfortable in that breath work, and that was like way too much. And so I just started to realize the impact that it was having on people's nervous systems, and started to like slowly shift like how much I would let people release, how deep I would take them, and some of the like heavier breathing, because like that's what really takes you in, is that like heavy, fast, like almost like hyperventilating breath, which like is potent and needed at times. And there was definitely times where my own body needed that, but now it's like gentle, like it's just this soft, sweet, like, let's bring some breath in. Where do you feel that in your body? What is that like for you? Can you sustain that? Can you hold that feeling in your body? And so those experiences were so valuable because I learned so much about how different everybody's nervous system is, how different people respond, and also that like that wasn't my place to open people up that big, that wide, that fast.
Another just statement of gold right there. So many little gold nuggets that I'm going to try to pause and unravel in my mind to dive deeper into each one of them.
The threads.
Yes, the threads. The first thread is that this reminds me a lot of, and of course I've experienced this breath work, it reminds me a lot as if you were to do a deep hallucinogenic spiritual session in where you blast out of your body. You truly do. You leave your body, you enter this universal portal in which you can receive, but also there's a lot out there. And I think that even when, you know, when I was in Peru and doing ayahuasca, the integration is a huge part of the medicine, because that's where you can actually layer in the experiences, where you can root them into your consciousness. Right. But so often it's just this big blast of neurochemicals, this unbelievable experience, and you can be left at the end just feeling confused and almost more open and unraveled than you went into it with.
Absolutely,
so I love that you touched upon that, because the integration is huge, and it's something that I do see is missing a lot.
Right, like when you're in the jungle,
yes,
it's like that in and of itself is integration. And then you're typically at a retreat center and there's people supporting you. But when I'm doing a 2-hour workshop, there's nothing. Like, goodbye, get in your cars, like drive safe.
Yeah, drive home.
Right, and one of the first times that I had like a huge breathwork session for myself with my therapist, she was like, I want you to be really careful. I ended up getting in my car. I was like drinking a bunch of Starbucks at that time. I had like Camel Lights in my car, smoking, doing all the things. And I nailed the person in front of me and was just like, oh, this is dangerous.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if that's what can happen, why are we doing this in this way?
Yes. This is an interesting question that I wasn't prepared to ask you. Do you feel like people that are really drawn to breathwork, because I have someone in my mind that I'm thinking of, someone that is really drawn to breathwork, and it's because they used to have struggles with addiction?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a really big market. I don't know the word to use there. There's a lot of people in addiction recovery that end up becoming breathwork teachers and bringing that into addiction facilities because, yes, like you were just saying, it is a psychedelic experience. You do get high. You do leave your body at certain points. And so it's like it directly mirrors that high that potentially they got using drugs or substances, and also gives them an opportunity to potentially, if it's led right, feel their feelings and deal with the trauma that they've been trying to suppress for so long. So yes, addiction and breath work like really go hand in hand.
Beautiful. And just so my listeners are aware, I feel like everything can be medicine or poison, depending on the individual. And even in us saying breath work, there are so many things that can fall under that umbrella of breath work. And in my own physiology, there are certain styles and practices that do feel like medicine, some that do not. And that is ultimately related to the set point of the autonomic nervous system. And when I was speaking to the drug addiction piece, I can absolutely see how this could be medicine. But on the flip side of it, I could absolutely see how someone could be addicted to that high, and then they are stimulating their nervous system in a very similar way to something like a stimulant, something like cocaine, something like meth, because it's releasing very, 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 very similar, even something like tobacco. It is a stimulant to the brain. So someone could get addicted to feeling that, making their own endogenous release rather than picking up a substance. And that is something that I have seen firsthand. I will actually never forget. And I wonder if my sweet friends who are listening to this podcast remember this day. We did a private breathwork ceremony. It was just 3 of us. And I've been this way forever. So I'm always going to question anyone that I'm with. And this sweet individual, the man leading the breathwork training, and I'm in a training session, I asked him, has anyone ever passed out? Has anyone ever lost consciousness? Because I was just a baby medical student at that time, but we were learning all about respiration, and your brainstem will absolutely take over. Your brainstem will tell your diaphragm if it should fill up with air, or if it should release, and it will control, because your brainstem is very clearly controlling how much oxygen and carbon dioxide is in your body. And he said, yes, people do. And I said, why? And he told me, this is my biggest pet peeve, is when someone in the spiritual community that has no idea what's going on scientifically tells me that it has to do with you not surrendering to the moment. That if you don't surrender to the moment, this internal resistance is going to take over. That is not what is fucking happening. My sweet friend, she was hyperventilating. She turned blue. Her lips went in full tetany. Like it looked like a little butthole is what her lips looked like. She had to get a little breathing tube in there. Her hands were like this into her body.
The lobster claws.
Yeah. And the whole time they were just saying, you must surrender to this moment. I'm going to pause before I continue to talk shit. Okay. What do you think of that? Or what comes up? What comes up, I guess, in that? Anything.
What do I think of that moment?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting because I see that happen sometimes. And it's often like, when people go into that space, I often lead them out of doing hyperventilation and hard breath work, because sometimes people come to my workshops and they're just like, I'm in it to get in, and like, I want to go deep, I want to go hard, I want to go fast. And I'm like, great. I trust that you know your body. I trust that like, you're going to do what's best for you. And like, that's not how I guide, but I'll hold that space for you if that's where you want to go. And it's like when somebody goes into that cramped up state, I'm not about to push them further into that. Their body is having a very visceral reaction to the breath work. And the last thing I want to do is push it farther and make them so uncomfortable, because it's like your body is experiencing feelings. And if you get so scared that you don't want to ever do the breath work again, let's say.
Yes.
Then you're not going to ever want to feel your feelings. And you're going to relate feeling your feelings with a cramped up butthole mouth. And it's like, that's not what I want to do, right? And so it's like the way that I'm working with breathwork is like, this is just a small little dose into feeling something. Then we're going to focus on where that feeling is in our body, and we're going to widen our capacity for those feelings. We are not going to push you to be uncomfortable, to hurt you. We as humans have had enough pain in our lives. We do not need to keep having painful experiences over and over. And so it's not about fucking surrendering.
Yeah.
No.
Thank you, Queen. Thank you. This is why I trust you. This is why I trust you, because you get it and you understand. And just from a physiological standpoint, when you are, the breath work that we are speaking about is hyperventilation. You are breathing in a fast pace. It is deep, fast breaths, and hyperventilation is essentially where you are breathing faster than physiologically your brainstem, your diaphragm wants you to do. And when you inhale, we all know this, we are inhaling oxygen. As you exhale, you're breathing out carbon dioxide. So what can happen when someone is hyperventilating is they are pushing out so much carbon dioxide that, yes, your blood will become alkaline. No, you do not stay alkaline. You don't stay alkaline because eventually that's going to switch. Your brainstem will take over to change the pH of your blood to be in a physiological state. However, if you are forcing yourself to hyperventilate, eventually you will reach something called respiratory alkalosis, which means that you have breathed in such a way that you've breathed out so much carbon dioxide that your blood is now alkaline. What that does is it shifts your entire cellular environment. So it changes the electrochemical nature of your cellular environment and your cells so that they fire in a different way. So this is tetany. This is like, if you get tetanus, you know how we don't want tetanus? That is literally what is happening in your body. That is not something you can surrender out of. And I do find that in certain types of breath work, every facilitator guides it differently. But in certain types of breath work, you hyperventilate, but then you breath hold. And while you breath hold, you allow that carbon dioxide to build itself back up to even out the blood. But in some individuals, some guides, they don't do that. They just encourage you to go deeper, surrender, go harder. And what will happen then is your brainstem will be like, you are so fucking dumb, you little human brain. And it's going to shut you down. And you can pass out. You can stop breathing. Your body can spasm. You can enter a seizure state. And I'm saying all these things from my medical background because there are some individuals in my world that if they told me that they were doing a breathwork training or that they were going to go down the Wim Hof wormhole, I would really educate them on what is going on in their nervous system and how that style of breathing could be very detrimental to their underlying health. And I love that in your journey, you intuitively kind of felt that.
Right. And there's like two things that I want to name here. It's
Please.
like the breath work that we're doing is all in and out of the mouth, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
so that's
yes.
like
Can you actually show it for a second just so that my viewers can, if you don't mind?
No, not at all.
Okay,
so
great.
I just do a 2-part breath, which I learned from my teacher, David Elliott. Breath into the heart, breath into the belly, but opposite way because here we go. So it's all in and out of the mouth. It's a deep breath into the belly and it sounds like this. And then your second breath goes up into your chest and then you gently exhale. And that's how I guide it. Often teachers guide it as and I can't even catch I can't even catch my breath as I do that. I can literally not catch my breath to keep up with that pace. It's too much. And then the other thing that I want to name is that I blew out my nervous system doing this breath work. And I've gotten to the place where my body is like, absolutely fucking not. Like, we will not do this, to the point that I can't currently drink stimulants. And my body's just like, no more stimulation, please. And so as much as it was intuitive, it was also my body, which I've chosen to listen to, that's telling me we're not going to do that. That doesn't feel good. And so that's what guides my work, because it's like, I can't in integrity lead people through something that blew out my own nervous system and took out my ability to function on certain days in the world.
Beautiful.
Not fair.
No, not fair. Thank you for breaking that down and for showing that. And I'm grateful that you listened to your beautiful body. And I am also grateful that your breathwork guided you in that way, because for a while I felt like there was something wrong with me when all my friends were jumping on this breathwork train. And I've sat for quite a few ceremonies. I really have. And I felt it in my body. And yes, I've had these beautiful experiences where I've connected with my ancestors, where I've saw myself sleeping on a cloud, looking down at the earth at myself. These beautiful experiences that I've only had in deep meditation or with plant medicine. And I cherish those moments. However, I didn't feel good at the end. I never felt good. I'd feel on edge. A lot of the time these ceremonies were at night. I wouldn't be able to sleep. I'd feel heart palpitations. I'd feel anxious and shaky, almost like a little chihuahua. And that is because of the stimulant nature of that breath work. And some people, they need that. I can think of a handful of people in my life that could definitely use a little bit more adrenaline to get through their day. But many individuals have plenty of adrenaline.
Totally.
Plenty of it.
Yeah. And sometimes people need that sometimes it only has to be a few sessions to awaken something within them that says like, oh, I can feel my body now. And like, I never want to discredit how much this breath work has done for me and guided my path. And within that, like, you know, plant medicine ceremonies, it's like they've opened me up. They've shown me so much about myself. And also I'm in a place currently where like I need to learn how to take care of my human body. And those things, while are helpful to guide me in, can actually distract me from like the bare minimum of just like, yeah, I need 3 meals a day. Like if I'm high all the time, I don't focus on the fact that I need 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
And that's, how I've ended up just realizing like, okay, how can I bring this into a more sustainable, integrated system that doesn't push people to not recognize like, hey, you came into a human body for a reason. Let's focus on that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, another beautiful truth bomb that you just dropped. And we met in a very small town, Ocean Beach in San Diego, and it is a very unique place. It is very spiritually open. It's very fluid. It is where my consciousness exploded without a doubt in my mind. But it would be silly for me to say all of that and not say that there's a lot of kind of spiritual bypassing, a lot of just thinking that you're a guru when you're really just a human who decided to wear all white that day. So I think that a lot of people can get stuck in the high, like you were saying, or the out of body experiences. But we are incarnated for a reason, like you said. And so much healing does happen when we are in the body. And if that breath work allows you to open up and to feel these parts of yourself that you've hidden, beautiful. Yeah. But if you're using it as a means to escape your reality, then that's just something else that you can become addicted to.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, there are times where I'm just like, all of life is an addiction. And it's just a matter of like choosing which ones sustain and, you know, nourish my body and taking out the ones that don't. But absolutely, I mean, you can become so addicted to breathwork, and I've seen it over and over and over again. And addictions are helpful and can be allies. And that's how we learn more about ourselves for sure.
This is true. This is true. So clearly you still practice pranayama breathwork on the regular. So what are some breath practices that have felt nourishing and supportive in your body?
Yeah. So I'm guiding a very gentle breathwork, all in and out of the mouth, but it's just one inhale, one exhale. And honestly, nostril breathing, alternate nostril breathing is my practice right now. And just like actually focusing on breathing in and out through my nose, because I've been in this breath work for so long, I've shifted to breathing in and out through my mouth as my like default. And I've just started reading a lot about how important it is to breathe in and out through the nose for your health. So like, that's literally my practice right now is like, oh, I'm watching a movie. Like, okay, can I focus on breathing in and out through my nose? And that's been super supportive for me and like all that my body needs. And I'm in a place where it's like, I can take 10 deep breaths and drop into the same space that it used to take me 20 minutes of heavy breathing to get into. It's almost like a switch. And like, I can't quite like find the languaging for it, but this is my experience of it. It used to take me 20 minutes to like get to my feelings and my tears and my sadness and my anger or whatever it is that I was hiding from myself. Now I can take 10 deep breaths and I can literally pick out, oh, I'm feeling this in my body. It lives here. This is where it comes from. This is why I had that story in my body. Can I breathe into it for a few more breaths? And then I'll have a nice gentle cry and then I move on. And I've gotten into this like really sweet space with breath work where it's just this like constant reminder to just feel. And then I've also figured out how to like nurture and mother myself in that place. And so it looks vastly different than it used to, like where I used to have to like throw myself on the floor, do a 30-minute to hour-long session. I'd sob, I'd cry, I'd have a tantrum, but I've learned how to widen my window of tolerance for feeling. And I don't have to have these huge tantrums anymore, which is so nice as a 32-year-old woman to not be throwing fucking tantrums.
But some people never threw fucking tantrums, so maybe they need to as adults, right? They have to. I have been since I was born.
Yeah, I have so many clients that I'm just like, they're like, I almost wanted to go into a tantrum. I'm like, good, do that.
Yes.
Like stomp your feet, throw some punches, like go into the tantrum that you were never allowed to have.
Smash some shit.
Throw some plates.
Smash.
Break it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The tantrums are important. Also,
all feelings are important. There's no good or bad feeling. They're all valid. But as humans, we've been told, push some down.
Yeah.
And only feel the good ones.
Don't show that one.
Don't show that one.
Yeah.
So as far as the breathing through the mouth and the nose, that's an interesting one because a lot of us were raised to breathe in and out the mouth. And even if I can take this back to the developmental world, in case you didn't know this, your mother made you the perfect food out of her breasts. Yes. That's where it came from, out of the breasts. And not many children were breastfed. And what happens when a baby takes a nipple and sucks it into their mouth, that nipple with their tongue being pressed on the roof of their mouth will shape their palate. So this shapes the palate and it also shapes the sinuses and it shapes the whole oropharyngeal nasal area.
Wow.
So in individuals that were not breastfed, what can happen is that development can be a little bit more constricted. So it's more challenging to pull in air in and out of the nose. And it's easier. There's just more free flow to breathe in and out of the mouth. But what that does at a neurological standpoint is it puts you in the fight or flight. It triggers your body to be on standby or to be on high alert. And some of us, I was this person. I was breastfed. Mindy, your breasts are perfect. I was breastfed. And still, though, I remember I had a lot of issues breathing out of my nose and I would mouth breathe for a very long time. And that's why it's really big now that people are talking about taping their mouths when they go to sleep. Because
I've seen that.
Yes, because it forces you to train yourself to breathe in and out of your nose. And you will actually see adults, their face can change, their structure can change as different things open. And in my own history, that was a big part of it, and teaching myself how to breathe in and out of my nose. And I even invite the viewers to try this. If you breathe in and out of your mouth, the same rate and rhythm versus breathing in and out of your nose, it feels very, very different. And it's because neurologically it's creating very different pathways. So that's just a fun little fact. So I could relate this to sinus issues. I could relate this to anxiety. I could relate this to an endless array of things, to braces. Yeah, I'm not going to go down the braces tangent. Okay. I will another time.
Okay, that feels important. I would like to know.
Okay, all right. Well, then I'll say it. So,
yes, for me, I'm learning so much.
Yes. So, with that whole sucking the nipple into the mouth thing, as we shape the palate, it broadens the palate. It broadens the upper palate, but also it's helping shape the entire jaw, the whole mouth. But also, when you're kids and you are developing outside of that, you need so many vitamins and minerals to develop bone, especially fat-soluble vitamins and minerals like vitamin D, vitamin K. Many individuals are nutrient depleted. This is without a doubt, but many children are nutrient depleted. I kid you not, I didn't eat real food until I was in high school. And I don't say that proudly, but I didn't. I ate American cheese. I ate fish sticks. I ate pizza. I didn't eat one vegetable. I remember my first vegetable. It was a bell pepper with ranch that I had at a restaurant that I worked at in 10th grade. And I was like, oh, this isn't bad. But anyway, what happens is when you chew real foods, like think of a carrot, chewing a raw carrot. It's very, I remember when I first started eating real food that my jaw was actually sore. And I'm not even kidding. You've had that experience too?
Also, yes.
Right? I think we have similar backgrounds in a lot of ways. But what that does is it works the muscles in your jaw and it helps develop and broaden the whole palate so that you're getting all these fat soluble vitamins, but you're also creating enough space in your mouth for your teeth to come in. So individuals that have a really fun orthodontic history, myself, I had braces for so long and then I had to get Invisalign because my teeth were still not okay. That can absolutely set you up for not being able to breathe efficiently in and out of your nose, which will push you towards the sympathetic nervous system, which will throw your whole autonomic nervous system off, which we're going to talk about how that plays into the immune system, into chronic infections, into autoimmune disease and all of that. But it really starts in childhood. It starts in your ability to have the structural ability to breathe in and out of your nose. And this can be trained in adulthood. I mean, we are both, we're reflections of that. But a lot of these patterns could have started back then.
Yeah. And like, it's a lot of work to change my neural pathways
Yes,
at
it
this
is.
age.
Yes, it
Like,
is.
it's a struggle, and I have to think about it all of the time. And when I'm not thinking about it, I'm breathing in and out through my mouth. Yeah. And there's almost an addiction piece to that of constantly feeling stressed out in my body and like wanting to recreate that in this overstimulated world as much as I can so that I can self-soothe.
Yes, cultivating that sense of safety. So I guess I will take this into a little bit more of a nerdy place since we're on it. We're in it. We're on it.
I'm here for it.
So some of my listeners have heard me say this, but just in case this is the first time tuning in, watch everything that I've posted so far. But we have two main arms of the nervous system. We have the somatic nervous system, soma. We are getting sensory information into our body, and we are having a motor output, moving my hands around is this motor output in this moment. But we also have an autonomic nervous system, which is kind of taking in things on the background and responding without conscious awareness. So these are things like interoceptive inputs, like what is our heart doing? What is our diaphragm doing? What is the internal world saying? And how does that show up as how we feel in the moment? And we don't have to think about how we breathe. Of course, we can consciously put effort into how we breathe, but outside of that, we don't necessarily think about it because our brainstem and these deep centers in our nervous system are doing it for us because we need to stay alive. So a lot of us are just, as we breathe, it is a reflection of our autonomic nervous system. And I think one of my favorite things about yoga is that it teaches you that you can kind of jump into the autonomic nervous system. You can go into those deeper waters and change your physiology by changing your breath. So in this powerful 2-part breath, for some people, if their autonomic nervous system tends to be slow, if they tend to be stuck in the parasympathetic state where they are resting and digesting all the time, and they don't have motivation to get up, to get shit done, to get out and do things that they are meant to do, something like 2-part breathing that smushes them into that sympathetic state, that adrenaline. These people are probably people that need, or not need, I don't think anyone needs Adderall, by the way, but people that think that they need Adderall to function. That would probably be really helpful for them to do this 2-part breath because they are getting that flood of dopamine, of epinephrine right to their brain to give them the motivation. However, some people have a flood of epinephrine floating around in their bodies at all times. So for them, their medicine would be something that, and I really do think of the autonomic nervous system as a dimmer switch. So some people need to be moved towards the parasympathetic so they can actually be grounded in their bodies, so they can rest and digest their food, so they can integrate and digest their emotions. And I'm one of those people. So I will take a yoga class, and honestly, there's a lot of instructors that will just guide generic breathing or say that everyone can do this breath work. And then here, me, little doctor, that's definitely more in the sympathetic state than parasympathetic. I do my own thing. I typically do alternate nostril breathing because that is my medicine. So, and again, I'm sharing all of this because I'm just one human. You're just another human. And we have had these experiences in our bodies, but there are going to be people listening to this, watching this, who have had a very different experience, and all of it is valid. All of it is real, but it's important to consider, especially for guides, that there is no medicine for everyone. In any arm of medicine, there's not one pill for everyone.
No, absolutely not. It's different for every single person. And I say that in my breathwork sessions. It's just like, this work is going to be for some of you and it's not going to be for all of you. And take what you like and leave the rest, because what is medicine for one person just isn't for another. And I think that the reason we're seeing such a surge of like breathwork teachers, breathwork ceremonies, that type of thing, is because we are living in a very overstimulated world. And so naturally, it feels like a breath of fresh air to take a half hour and just be with your breath. Like, and often I have people fall asleep. And I always say, I do. I always say at the beginning of my breathwork sessions, some people fall asleep, and that's what you needed. Like, that is exactly what you needed. Like, when was the last time you rested? And they're just like, oh shit, I don't even know the last time that I rested, because they're not resting. And we live in a culture that doesn't value rest. And so it's just like, yeah, if you want to come to my breathwork session and fall asleep and I'll sing you sweet songs, like, I'm fucking here for that too.
I am definitely here for that. I would love to rest while you serenaded me with lullabies. That sounds beautiful. Wow. I love that.
Yeah. Medicine takes different forms for different people. And we just have to tune in with our bodies enough to know what we need. And it's like, I'm really learning. I'm working with so many clients right now, and everybody's nervous system is so different. And what works for one person doesn't work for the next. And it's just like a problem solving. And within that, it's like, I'm teaching people to learn what they need, because so often, so many of us have not been asked, and what do you need? And I've been in this weird trip around just like watching people ask for their needs. And so often they're projecting the other person's needs to like passively get what they need. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think I do.
Like I had someone say to me like, oh, is this your plate on the counter here? And like what they were really trying to say was, I'd like you to move this plate because it's in my way.
Yeah.
But instead, like very passively, like, oh, is this your plate? And I'm just like, yes, it is. And I'm like, it's not my work anymore to figure out what other people need, right?
No.
But it is my work to support people in figuring out what they need. And so that's been a really beautiful process to unfold of just like, oh, your nervous system is different than your nervous system because your trauma is different than your trauma. And like, what is going to soothe you in this moment, and getting people to understand that for themselves. And it can be such a transformation of like, oh my God, I have a need, and it's okay to ask for what I need.
Yes.
And that's beautiful.
Yes. And your gift is your voice.
Oh,
it is. It is. And you're able to say those things, but you're also able to hold the space, and you're able to communicate in a way that helps people feel safe through that. Truly, you're someone that even as we've done business together, you're just so easy to talk to and communicate with, and you're direct. And I think that that's something that a lot of people aren't used to.
Right.
Right.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's uncomfortable to have somebody who knows what they need and knows how to ask for it. And then who's also willing to be like, I think you have a need there. Would you like to ask for it?
Yeah. I'm sensing there's a need.
There's something here.
Yes. Yes. Speaking of sensing.
Yes.
And you spoke a little bit to this, that you could feel yourself kind of going through these manic episodes and then swinging towards depression. What did you start to feel in your body or come up health-wise when you started?
This is such a good one. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. When I started breath work with my therapist, she gave me all these books and was like, take this with you to college and like do this breath work. And so I was doing this breath work with, by myself. I lived in a studio apartment in San Francisco, which is just like, whoa, a lot of stimulation.
Yes.
And I was doing it on my own, and I luckily, gratefully found a therapist that was literally next door to my building. So I had no good excuse not to show up to therapy. And I would come in there and I would be like super manically high. And she would be like, I'm thinking that like this combination of you smoking weed and doing breath work is like maybe not the medicine for you. And what she was really saying, and I wish that she had just like taught me this, was like, hey, you are throwing yourself way out of your window of tolerance, and you're not able to take care of yourself when you're out of your window of tolerance, and like you need to pull it back, sister. But instead I was just like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. And thus all of the medical problems ensued from that place. I had, at that time, I was dealing with like extreme sciatic back pain, to the point that I was like going to doctors, getting x-rays. I had chronic yeast infections all of the time. I was constantly tired. And at the time I was also like waking up first thing in the morning. I go to the shop down the street, and I was getting a cheesy Danish, but like one of those long versions, cheesy, sugary Danish, and a mocha with 4 shots of espresso.
Oh.
So I was just like loading my body up with fucking sugar first thing in the morning. And yeah, so my system was just like I was having chronic pain to the point that like I couldn't get out of bed for weeks at a time. And I was in school. And so like getting through school was so hard, but the breath work started to help me feel all of these things that I'd probably been feeling the whole time, but was able to like mask and not notice. And then it just kind of has spiraled since that time. And that was 10 years ago. And it's just been this journey of figuring out what's going on with my body. I went through the process of like, oh, I have severe candida, or like, where else did I go with that? The back pain has actually since stopped. So like that hasn't been a part of my experience anymore, and something moved or worked through me in a really beautiful way that I'm grateful for. And then, yeah, I started working with you, And I'm trying to think like what led me to that place. I got diagnosed with Lyme's from another doctor 3 years ago. And then we figured out that I have all of these chronic viral, chronic bacterial infections. And then it's just been like there's been so many symptoms and things that have showed up since I started my breathwork journey, which I find fascinating. And I'm kind of in this place where like you and I have covered a lot of things, like the fact that I can't eat gluten. And I had no idea that like, and I was literally like, when we talked, I was like having a sandwich a day on like some good sourdough, and taking out gluten has changed my life and my physical pain and my nerve pain. I was having so much nerve pain. Anyways, and then I'm starting to realize the relationship between childhood trauma and all of these like parasites, chronic viral infections, chronic bacteria infections. And so I'm looking at all of it, and it's like the naturopathic way is my personal way. And then there's like trauma healing that needs to happen, and they have to be happening simultaneously, because the work that we're doing together with all of the herbs is going to support me. And like, you know, herbs are like, you can tell me like this herb is going to be good for this part of your body, or this herb is going to be good for this part of your body. And also like plants are so fucking intelligent that it's like, they're also working on an emotional level. They're also working with that trauma, and they're helping bring it up. They're helping help you sift through it. And so then there's this other piece of trauma work, and it's like figuring out how to feel in my body and what it feels like to feel in my body. And like not only holding sadness of trauma, but also like the joy and the pleasure that comes from life. Because like, I know for me and my system, when I'm overexcited, I quickly want to push it out and share it with somebody else, instead of just like, oh, I'm fucking excited right now. Like, what does that feel like in my body? Right. And so it's, I guess back to your question, breath work revealed a lot about my body that has been both a blessing and a curse, and like gifted me this really beautiful relationship with my body, where it's like there's no lag time anymore between like the feeling that I'm having and what's happening in the moment. It's just like, oh, let me check in, like, okay, here's that. And then, you know, it's just been this process of like, the body, when there's trauma in the body, then often it becomes a home and a house for parasitic energy, like parasites, like viral infections, like bacterial infections. And so it's this double tending that I'm working on of how can I be with both sides of it. And like how many Western doctors I've seen that just like nightmare, just like wormholes of like, well, you know, we don't know what's going on here. Like, we'll run these blood tests, and then we'll send you over here, and then we'll send you to this doctor, and then this, and like, oh no, you're fine. And it's like, okay, but I don't feel fine. Yeah, it's frustrating. It is frustrating. It's so frustrating.
It is. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it, because I was hoping you would, but of course I'm not going to tell you to share something you don't want to share. But I can see how breathwork could play into all of those different things, especially, you know, feeling your feelings and whatnot, and the trauma, bringing it to the surface. You said that truly like a poet. So thank you for saying that. Yeah. But I did want to touch a little bit about the chronic infections piece, because we're going to talk all about it, fam. But a lot of the studies out there, because some people are like, let's look at the science. Okay, sure. Sure. Just know that also, just friends, that science is only published if it is allowed to be published. So just because something isn't in a medical journal or hasn't been published by science does not mean it doesn't exist. It might mean that it's being silenced. It might mean something else, right? But a lot of the research that is out there on breathwork is on Wim Hof and his kind of extreme hyperventilation. And a lot of what's out there, they talk about how anti-inflammatory it is and how it is incredible for inflammation. But you were just describing symptoms that are all inflammatory, right? You had this incredible joint pain. You were having other things show up in your body. And from my experience, and also just from those research studies, usually it shows up in that. And they did this in the study. They injected these participants with, I think, a bacterial endotoxin, and which would be an acute infection, right? You are outside, this infection enters your body, it replicates. So that is acute. It hasn't been living in your body trying to come out when your barriers are down.
Okay.
So these acute infections, when someone hyperventilates, what happens is that you release a bunch of epinephrine, a bunch of cortisol, and that is anti-inflammatory in nature. So it can kind of calm everything in the background. However, I work a lot with people with chronic infections. I mean, myself, that was a huge part of my healing journey. And what I see, and this happens a lot, even if you're not someone that has a chronic infection, you don't know this. When you are stressed, you're more likely to get sick. And that is because your immune system is suppressed. Inflammation is the way that the immune system works. So inflammation is not a bad thing. We need inflammation to target things in our body to heal. But of course, when it goes unregulated, that is something that we do want to control. So I could argue any side of anything, which is my issue. But I'm going to try to support myself in this statement in that if you are someone that has a lot of chronic infections, which many of us do, even something like mono can live inside you for a long time, different strep infections, different herpes infections, they can all live inside of us. And if you are someone that does a consistent breathwork practice that is telling your immune system, stop, 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 what's going to happen is that all these things that have been hiding in the background have a chance to come out and play, and they replicate and they get louder. So I could see how that could show up for many individuals. But then on the flip side of that, for someone who has something like autoimmune disease or something like chronic inflammation where they are in debilitating discomfort on a daily basis due to just this unrecognized alarm signal from within their body, then yeah, getting some extra cortisol on board to help calm that inflammation might be helpful. However, I do see a lot of fatigue come from this. I see a lot of the chronic infections coming out to play. I see a lot of just physiological stress that can then translate into menstrual cycle irregularities, changes in ovulation, changes in blood sugar, because also what is going on is when we hyperventilate or when we trigger the autonomic nervous system is that adrenaline, it breaks down our sugar stores so we can release more sugar into our bloodstream. So then that can lead to things like candida because you're feeding yeast, and it can lead to just these highs and lows of energy. So, and again, some people don't have chronic infections. Some people do need that. But for myself, it's not something I should do every day.
Yeah, definitely not. And you just like literally helped me understand so much of my body over the last 10 years. I'm like mind blown. I'm going to have to like take that home and like really sift through all of the things that have come up over the last 10 years. Cause it's just like, whoa, holy shit.
It's fun. I mean, it is fun, and we will sift through it together, but we only can kind of integrate what we know, right? And a lot of it is being in our bodies and feeling what it shows up as. And I mean, my knowledge of the human body can only take me so far because everyone has a different flavor of a human body as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. So many things.
So many. This just went so many directions.
I know.
I like absolutely did not expect it to, but yeah, it's been great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I said in that last statement, that truly wormhole, that you want me to go into deeper by any chance?
Ooh, you said a lot of things that I feel like I need to log. What did you say? There was something about, the candida, the breathing so much that the sugar, it breaks. Okay, tell me that again.
I would love to.
Okay.
So I will tell you that one of my biggest pet peeves, not that you said this, but so many people will come to me and be like, I have candida. Let me just say that all of us have candida. All of us have candida within us. All of us have an abundance of microorganisms that are just interacting and creating a environment within us. And it's truly what we feed that will grow. Thoughts that we feed will grow. Habits that we feed that will grow. Right. Creatures that we feed will grow. And yeast loves sugar. So if you know you're waking up in the morning and having your cheese Danish and having your mocha, yeah, you're going to feed yeast. Yes, but from a deeper level of the autonomic nervous system is that I work with so many people with blood sugar irregularities. I definitely had very unstable blood sugar for a long time. Yeah. And what adrenaline does is it will break down your sugar stores. So our body holds sugar in our liver and in our muscles so that if we are fasting, like when we're sleeping or when we were evolving and hunter and gatherers, we didn't have a consistent fuel supply. So our body would store some for later so that we can live. And if adrenaline is raging, what happens is that your body thinks that there's something that needs to fight, essentially. It thinks that there's something that it needs to ward off. So in order to do that, sugar is the one of the main energy sources of our body. So your body will release sugar to give you the energy to show up to a situation that your physiology is perceiving as a threat.
Right.
However, that could be a breathwork practice. Your body could perceive that this breathwork practice is a danger.
Right.
As a result, you'll release a bunch of blood sugar. And yes, that can feed different things. And I know for me, I used to have an issue not with vaginal yeast infections. I used to have skin yeast infections. It was growing all over my body. And
how did that show up? What does that look like?
how did that show up?
Yeah. Like,
did you not remember when I was a leopard? You don't remember this about me? Oh, that makes me really happy. I was a straight up leopard, babe. Yeah. I was just really good at hiding it with like my hair because I would cover my body.
I guess I do remember.
No, it was all over my chest. It was all over my neck. It was truly from head to toe. I was a leopard, but I was also the most stressed I've ever been in my life. Medical school really almost killed me.
I was talking to a friend about that recently. Yeah. Why does medical school. Why does medical school kill its students?
You know, and I went to naturopathic medical school in which we were all very aware of what was going on.
Chinese
and stress.
Medicine.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, same.
I think that the sheer amount of information that you have to get into your brain, there's no way to, if it was going to be a stress-free program, it would have to be 10 years long.
Yeah.
It would have to be.
It would have to be.
Yeah.
And could that be okay? We live until we're like 80 or 90 or sometimes even 100, celebrated 110 person the other.
Look at that.
Wild. Could it be okay that we were in school for 10 years? And like, yeah, it's been blowing my mind recently.
It is. It is a travesty, I would say, that everyone that I know and love from my medical school program got very sick.
Very sick.
During it.
Yeah.
Very sick.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It like breaks my heart almost because it's like, y'all are the ones who are supposed to be supporting us and like helping us. And then it's just like, you're not given the tools and the foundation you need to love and take care of your body. And that's heartbreaking.
I will argue, though, that it forces you. It forces you to put yourself first.
Yeah.
I was actually chatting about this with a patient yesterday. I, in medical school, had no choice but to teach myself how to rest and how to turn my mind off. Right. Because if not, you have a to-do list that is never ending. I remember sitting down on a daily basis, looking at my to-do list and then thinking that I could keep going up until now, up until at this point in my medical practice, because there's just never ending things to learn, to explore, to create, to support, and you could easily burn yourself out just by going through that circle. Yeah. So I had to force myself that every day at this time, you're done. On Saturdays, you're done. You are taking time to meditate every day. You are taking time to move your body every day, because if not, I would feel very unwell. And I had many individuals in my program that would say, how do you do that? How do you schedule time to do this? And it's because I had no fucking choice. Yeah. My body would not let me, because that's the fun thing about cortisol too and stress is that cortisol, if you have enough of it, which we all do, trust me, it binds to the part of your brain that helps you remember things. So that's why if you're really stressed too, you're like, oh, I don't know where my keys are. I don't know who that person is. I don't remember that event. And it's truly because you have so much cortisol that you can't remember. Oh, so wow. I would be studying and have no idea what I was reading just because there was so much cortisol in my brain. So I was actually, I feel, able to retain more in doing less.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. It really, it forces you to take care of yourself, but the people and the individuals that still put themselves second or that don't put themselves first will get very, very sick.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess what I'm hearing from you is like your schedule helped you schedule in time for yourself, like being so packed with things. And yeah, there are some people who like, they cannot schedule that time in for themselves. It's like the other thing comes first. And so somehow you magically were able to create a scenario for yourself where it was like, you could figure things out and love on your body. And that's so beautiful and so special.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And now that I also reflect on it too, it wasn't necessarily that I did it for myself. I was working well in medical school. Most of my friends were not, but I did because I was still healing my relationship with money. Wish I just maxed out all my student loans. I have no intention of paying them back ever. So I wish that I just maxed them all out and lived off those, but I didn't. But if you're in med school, max them out. Money is fake. Money is fake. But I was teaching yoga. So I would be teaching yoga, holding space for individuals, and I would be jealous. I would feel jealous that they were taking this time for themselves. And then I just had this kind of fog lift and say, oh, you could make this time for yourself. And then you won't be jealous. You will not be jealous of these people. So it fully changed it all for me. And even speaking to that and kind of bringing it back to breath, I think that was a huge part of me staying sane in that program as well, because even in yoga, the natural, in an asana practice, a lot of what we practice out here is ujjayi breathing,
Right.
which is where you are activating your vagus nerve, where you are using the muscles in the back of your throat to constrict, to hug the breath in, to hug the breath out.
Right.
And that, for those of you that don't know, it's, you breathe like you sound like Darth Vader. So it sounds like this. It's a really good Darth.
Yeah, I love the Darth.
Really good Darth. And that, even in that one moment, I'm not stressed at all. I'm having so much fun, but I could feel myself ground a little bit.
Yeah.
So that was always medicine for me. And also I wanted to touch upon alternate nostril breathing, since both of us brought it up, and why that is so medicinal.
Oh, so good.
It's so good. And since I've been talking nonstop, tell me a little bit about why you love alternate nostril breathing.
Oh man, I mean, I did a yoga teacher training, and I think they taught us, and I don't know how accurate or not accurate this is, but like this was the story, that it helps balance out the yin and yang sides, the masculine, feminine sides of our bodies. And I've just gone with that ever since. But I just noticed for myself, there's nothing quite like this breath, because it's such a focus on the presence, in that I'm breathing through one nostril for 6 counts. I'm holding the holds. Love the holds. You brought up holds earlier and what that does for the body. Love the holds in breath work. Like, that is a vital part of my teachings. And then holding and then exhaling out the other side for a count of 6. I mean, it's like, it's slightly complex in terms of like breath work patterns that you can do. You have to think about it a little bit more. So like, especially for like my clients who are really dealing with very heavy thoughts and like can't get into like meditation or whatever, you know, their story about themselves is, then offering that breath pattern can be so supportive, because there's so much to think about in doing it. And then once you get into that flow with it, it's like you're already in that space of like, I feel really good right now. Like, I don't need to think about anything else. And so, yeah, it just feels like this kind of gateway into an alternate present reality.
That was so juicy and delicious. I loved it. And the key word that I'm highlighting that you said is balance. It is balancing. Whether, you know, those teachings are true or not, I do believe they are, the yin and the yang, just different energetic representations of right and left brain, of masculine and feminine, any language that we want to use for them.
Left and right hemisphere, sure.
Exactly. And as you alternate between both nostrils, you're feeding one side of yourself and then the other, and the energetic aspects and the physical aspects. So it is incredibly balancing. And I am definitely the chick in yoga that when someone's doing something like Kapalbhati for 5 minutes long, or something just very, very stimulating like Bhastrika. And if you don't know what these are, they're more stimulating breath practices. Yeah. And if my nervous system doesn't need it, which most days it does not. You saw me before I drank coffee before I got in here.
Yep.
I don't need that.
No.
So I am the one doing alternate nostril breathing. I don't give a fuck what anyone else in the room is doing, because I also noticed that as a yoga teacher, it is silly for me to not acknowledge that there is a lot of pressure in that room to conform to what everyone else is doing.
I was just thinking the same thing. Like, if I hadn't taught yoga, I wouldn't give myself permission to do my own practice. And I just feel like saying to everyone out there, like, do your own thing.
Yes.
Like, do what feels good in your body.
Yes.
And like, that teacher up there, I'm sure knows great things. Yes. And also, you know yourself better.
Always.
Yeah.
I say that to every single one of my patients when we go through their recommendations. This is just what I think would serve you, but you know what resonates. You know how it feels in your body.
Right.
That is the ultimate teacher here. Yeah. And in that, giving yourself permission to show up as you are, even as the teacher, you know, you don't know what someone's dealing with internally. You don't know what their morning was like. Yeah. You don't know if they're on any medications. You don't know if they have high blood pressure. You don't know if they're about to have a stroke.
Right.
You don't know.
But
breath work is so incredibly powerful, because it is that window into the autonomic nervous system. Your autonomic nervous system is controlling your immune system, as we talked about. Your autonomic nervous system is controlling a lot of your emotional patterns, your neurochemistry, your hormones being released, and it's also releasing the size and the shape of your blood vessels, because each of these molecules, oxygen and carbon dioxide, our blood vessels are almost like little endocrine organs, and they are sensing what is in the blood, and then they respond. So they can get bigger or smaller depending on the gas that is floating around in there. And what if someone really is about to have a stroke, and then you do a breath practice in which now all of their blood vessels constrict?
Right.
this is a real thing. I'm not trying to scare you, but I'm trying to empower you that this is literally medicine.
Yeah.
So who would know that though? The individual doing it, who would have these red flag signals in their brain being like, I don't know, something's wrong. But then if they are,
doesn't feel right.
yes. And then if they're in their head being like, but this girl's doing it, that guy's doing it, this person's doing it, I want to do it because I don't want to be the one left out.
Right.
Then you could put yourself in a very precarious situation.
Absolutely. And I've had people, I mean, at this point in my practice, I've done like so many workshops. And so I have people from all over, and it's like, I've had people come up and say like, hey, I have a heart condition. And it's like, okay, cool. You're going to want to really listen to your body, and you're going to want to take this really, really gently. Don't push yourself past your comfort. And I've noticed in yoga sessions, like people don't really have that space because it's a hour-long class to say like, hey, I'm dealing with this health issue, right? And there isn't always that invitation from the teacher to do what feels best for them in their body. And yeah, it could end up in a scary scenario that like I, as a teacher or facilitator, like I'll figure it out, but like I don't really want to deal with that. Like that sounds slightly stressful, more than slightly stressful.
Yeah, sounds stressful for me, and I'm a doctor.
Right.
Yeah. So I get that. And I think that that's also the beautiful, opportunity to work with someone one-on-one, because you can have those conversations. You can set up the relationship so that you feel safe to explore your body without the external influence of what anyone else is doing outside of you.
This is about you and your space and what you're doing and what you're feeling. Totally.
And that is what this entire practice is for, to get to know yourself, to heal yourself. But even in a yoga community, there's a lot of ego involved, right? Like every yoga injury I've ever had was because of my ego, not because I was listening to my body. And you could absolutely do that on deeper levels with breath work as well. So
yeah, pushing yourself too far. Yeah. And we're like, in this society, we're trained to do that.
We are.
Like, don't listen to your body.
Yeah.
Keep pushing. And if you don't, you're lazy.
Yeah, you're lazy.
And like, I'm constantly running into that in my own practice, in my own work, in my own life. Like, I don't do enough. And it's like, I've become okay with that. I've accepted that about myself, that like, I rest.
You rest.
I rest a lot, and that's necessary for me.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I support rest.
Thank you.
You are so welcome. You know who doesn't support rest? The breath teachers that are telling you to surrender when your mouth turns into a butthole and you have crab claws. That's who's not telling you to rest.
Yeah, that is absolutely not who's telling you to rest. Yeah, they're like, push it harder. It's like turned into kind of a CrossFit scenario. I'm just like, oh my God, please don't.
Yes, please stop. Oh, hilarious. Well, my love, I could talk to you nonstop about anything.
I know.
Under the sun.
There's so many ways to go.
There's so many ways to go, but I feel like we covered a lot.
Yeah.
I learned a lot. I'm feeling inspired and also just very open to this whole world of healing, something that I haven't explored a lot recently outside of my own at-home breath work practices. Yeah. So before we leave, all the gorgeous humans that have joined us today, I would love for you to share anything that you want to share with my community, whether that's a love bomb for someone, a truth bomb based on something you want to share, a knowledge bomb, something we didn't get into yet.
Yeah, I guess we did get into this, but it's like, this is what's coming through me like really strongly at this moment, is just like, you know your body better than anybody else can tell you. Like, I know that we've been taught in our society to like go to a doctor, go to a healer, like get exorcised from this like evil spirit that's taking over us, or whatever the story is that we tell ourselves, right? Like, and you are your best healer, and no one is going to be able to tell you what's going on in your body better than you can. And I tell this to like all of the viewers, and also I say it to remind myself, because so often I'm seeking external validation to have somebody tell me what's wrong with my body, when it's like, if I could just sit and take 10 breaths, I will quickly figure out what's going on with my body. I think I need to put like Post-it notes all over my house, like, hey, you check in with you first before like calling that friend to see if you're like, dealing with all of the stories I make up about how I'm dying. But I'm fine.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Yeah, you are your own best healer, and you'll know what your body needs if you listen to it.
Beautiful. I love that so much. And just so that all the people that are watching this can follow you and work with you if they're interested, how can they contact you?
I'm Breath of Blake on all of the things. Breath of Blake on Instagram, breathofblake@gmail.com, breathofblake.com. My website just got upped into this crabby, beautiful space for me. I'm a Cancerian, so it just checks out. And that's how you can get in touch with me. And I do workshops and one-on-one work. And yeah, I am feeling really lit up in my work right now. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share about it in a way that feels really nourishing and in a realm that's new, right? Like shifting from breath work into like trauma work and being both and.
Yes. You are so welcome. Thank you for doing the work that you do and for being someone that I trust to explore that with in my own body and in my own self, because truly I'm not going to tell anyone to do anything that I wouldn't feel comfortable doing. So again, thank you for helping me explore this part of myself. And thanks for being the first person to open up the portal for me to talk to my grandma.
Oh,
because that was really the start of my whole spiritual journey. I was like, what? There are angels? What?
Wow.
So truly it was.
I didn't know this. And
Yes.
thank you for sharing that with me even all these years later.
You're welcome.
So special.
All right, my babies, if you enjoyed this talk today, please like this, share this, subscribe, turn on your notifications, because everything we talked about, we're probably going to have like 10 to 15 more episodes on. So make sure that you're in the loop. Thanks for tuning in. I love you.